Hi there, Duke fans. Episode 764 of the DBR podcast, the Duke Basketball Roundup. Look, it is possible that this is coming to you in your feed in a way that you somehow missed episode 763. Folks, don't do that. Go back right now. Make sure you listen to 763. It is the season preview, the stats game. Jason, Donald, Sam Klein, and Scott Rich, all four of us hopped on to talk about the Duke basketball season by way of what statistics we think everybody's going to have. I'm Jason, by the way. Donald is with me today. That was a lot of fun, wasn't it, Donald? And I'm just so worried. Just the nature of the way we released that one, and it's a long episode, and then releasing this one, I'm worried that folks are going to miss out.
I don't think they're going to miss out. We've already got some traction on it. And again, if you haven't listened to it, make sure you do. It's one of the things. And comment as well online. We're obviously on Blue Sky. We're on Twitter. We're on Instagram. The DBR forums. A lot of people will be chatting about some of these stats all season. But Jason, as basketball season is about to start, the football team said, not so fast. You're going to talk about us today.
Exactly. Right. Donald and I are here because we have to talk about a tremendously impressive victory by the Duke Blue Devils over the Clemson Tigers. The final score, 46-45. Duke wins on a 2-point conversion at the very end of the fourth quarter with only 40 seconds left. Donald, one of the most enjoyable games that I have ever seen. Each team was just throwing haymakers at each other, just boom, boom. There's no way they're going to get up from that one, and the other team would get up and throw a haymaker back. Just huge play after huge play. Obviously, a incredibly historic win to Duke. They were talking about all the crazy stuff that was happening the last time Duke won 45 years ago at Clemson. It was incredibly exciting, incredibly fun. We are here to talk about that, and a little bit later on, folks, we will also be previewing Duke's game against the Texas Longhorns coming up this week, and I'm talking about Duke basketball, the first game of the basketball regular season.
Jason, this game, you're a movie buff. This game was Rocky 2, right? Where both guys, both Rocky and Apollo, are throwing haymakers, knocking each other down, and somehow Rocky gets up at 9 when Apollo couldn't get up past 10. Like, it was that close of a game, back and forth throughout the whole game. Jason, some superlatives for you mentioned the first time Duke has won at Death Valley since 1980. They've only won 5 times at Death Valley in their program's career. So that is incredible. 5th straight road victory dating back to last season. First time since we rattled off 6 straight road wins between 1961 and 1963. And Jason, that was the second straight.
To be clear, that's in the ACC. That's not just
in the
regular
ACC. Correct.
Yes, that's ACC road wins, which makes it even more impressive.
And this is the second straight win against Clemson. Obviously, that Labor Day game a couple of years ago where we stomped them out. This is the second straight time we've beaten Clemson. That's the first time since 1969 and 1970 that we've beaten Clemson twice in a row. Jason, this is we talked about it in the preview saying, hey, of a team this good and a Clemson team that have been reeling, we still have to overcome those historical marks that I just mentioned. And it took a Herculean effort. It took a lot of grit, determination. As you mentioned, getting back off the canvas, it felt like every other drive, as Clemson would answer something that we had done and vice versa. But this team really, I'm so proud of how they were able to tough this out. And that ballsy call by Manny Diaz to go for 2 instead of kicking the extra point and taking the chance in overtime. That shows the confidence he had in his team to get the job done.
Yeah, Manny Diaz, after the game, there were a couple comments that he had that I thought were really great. One was he said, knowing that our best, he said, we played our best, Clemson played their best. He said, knowing that our best was better than Clemson's best is a big step forward for this program. Man, I could not agree more. That's just such a huge, huge statement. And the other thing he said that I thought was functionally the story of the game, he said, you're not going to come in here, play safe, and win. The story of the game, Donald, is Duke's plays on 4th down. It's Duke not playing it safe. It's Duke going for 2 when if you fail, the game is over. Duke goes just 3 of 14 on 3rd down. and goes 5 and 4th down. And like it wasn't desperation. Opening drive. Duke's going for it on 4th down twice on the opening drive. And they were the right place in the field to do it every time. It made perfect sense. I didn't even really doubt that he was going to go for it. But beautiful execute. Every one of those 4th down plays was really, really well executed. Before we get into all our stuff, we got a couple headlines I wanted to do really quick.
Yeah, go for it.
We don't really call for headlines a lot on football, but we get some folks, some of our best headline writers who chime in, especially after a game like this. There were 2 of them I wanted to shout out. First, John Grantland, who, by the way, grew up in Anderson, South Carolina, surrounded by Clemson fans his whole life. John was enjoying this game. John gave us a very quick one, an homage to the Flintstones. Yabba dabbo done. That is so good. I read that. I was just like, yabba dabbo done. That's hysterical. But then the best one was Chris Emmershine. I mentioned Donald the 4th downs. Chris Emmershine's headline, wait for it, people. Go forth and conquer. And fourth, of course, spelled F-O-U-R-T-H. That is perfect. That is the description of this game.
The 4th down conversions were great because it wasn't just 4th and short, right? It wasn't we had 4th and 2 and we could do a dump off, which we did a couple of times. I think it was Anderson Castle or Nate Shepard were able to catch a couple of those 4th down conversions. But the big story on 4th down was when we were 4th and 8, 4th and 7, 4th and 11, and we would throw the ball downfield to Jeremiah Hasley, who had a great game because I feel like of his like 5 or 6 catches, 3 of them were on 4th down conversions to keep drives alive. And he was sure hands. We were able to find guys down on the slant down the middle of the field. We had a couple of those plays, not even on 4th down, but some of those plays on 1st and 2nd where we were able to get big yardage by finding a guy in the seam, and they were able to go for it. And then I gotta say, Cooper Barkate, hello, man, that was awesome. That play, again, a great play call on his 77-yard touchdown where. I think the closest person to him was you and me, Jason, watching on TV. It was terrific. You could see that it was on the Clemson sideline too, and they have the angle where you kind of see the player running towards the camera, and you see the Clemson sideline, and everyone on the Clemson sideline like, why is that guy open? That guy is the last person that should be open. He's the one that catches the ball. So it was great play calling, but great execution by our offense.
Yeah, I wanted to mention just a few of the huge chunk plays. You mentioned Barkate's 77-yard TD catch, which, by the way, came just seconds after Clemson scored to make it 7-7. Like, it's the ultimate response. We did the same thing after halftime when they scored to go up midway through the 3rd, and Samir Hagans returns the kickoff 100 yards to tie it up again. It was like every time, like I said, every haymaker was followed by a response. How can you not talk about the 43-yard bomb to Quayshawn Brown with only seconds left in the half to tie it up at halftime? Huge play. And then, of course, you kind of alluded to it. It was a 56-yard pass, I think, to Jeremiah Hasley. Yeah, that was. That it took us out of the shadow of our goalposts. I think it was 3rd down, not 4th down, but in any event, it was, Duke was in a desperate spot, and that was the play that sort of made you go, oh, wait a second, this is going to happen that was the play where I was like, it's happened right now. Donald, by the way, I want to pause and just say we're going to get to the controversial, social media is all over the 4th down play that was a pass interference that set up the Duke touchdown. We're going to get to that in a minute. Before we get to that, there are a couple other things I wanted to talk about from this game, and then we're going to spend some time on that, I know. First of all, the 2 teams combined for 999 yards of total offense. Guys, can you not get one more yard? Can we not get to 1,000 combined?
So, tough day for the defense.
A knee at some point. Someone messed up. We had to get 1,000 total yards. I wanted to, of course, shout out Darian Mensah, and I want to mention how calm and composed that dude is. Totally unflappable. Manny Diaz said that when they got the ball back in 94 yards to go, they hit their own 6-yard line. 94 yards to go to tie up the game or go for 2. And there's 5 minutes left in the game, and Manny Diaz says he went up to Darian Mensah and just looked at him and was like, dude, isn't this fun? We got 95 yards to go to make history. And Mensa like just smiled back at him, was just like, yeah, completely calm. Never seems at all flustered out there. Just kept throwing dimes after dimes. And Clemson, by the way, is putting pressure on him. He got sacked twice, but there were, I can't even count how many plays there were where he got away from the pressure, got outside the pocket, looked around for a second and said, okay, I'm firing this ball downfield and making sure we don't take a sack.
I was going to commend him on the fact that he was able to keep a lot of plays alive, a lot of drives alive by his feet. He wasn't running for first downs or anything like that, but he was mobile enough behind the line of scrimmage that he was able to buy time for his receivers. But also, Jason, he made some great incompletions, right? Some great decisions to throw the ball away and say, hey, this is not our play, but this next one, we got them set up. I think also on one of the plays where it went for a long stretch, maybe the Hostley play, there was a play right before where he threw the ball out of bounds to the left. And if you notice it kind of opened up the middle because they said, okay, this guy, if we pressure him, he's going to go to either the right or to the left. They pressured him again. He got the ball off quickly. Hasley had a whole acre of space down the middle to get the ball and go. So it happened a couple times. I think the Angelo Anthony touchdown, it was a similar play where they rushed and they said, "Oh, we're going to try and drive him to the left or the right," and he just said, "No, I'm going straight down Broadway." And we had a wide receiver waiting for it. So again, his poise in the pocket was one thing. His ability to run and create, whatever play was need to be played is another. But the decision making is why he's been elite so far this year. He's made great decisions with the football, and I'm sure the reason why we are in this position right now is because of the fact that the offense is moving the sticks. Whether we don't have whether our run game is on or off, Darian Mensah has been the gold standard, and he's been the constant just confidence boost that this team has needed.
Yeah, speaking of decision making, I do have one decision by Darian Mensah that I'd like to correct on his part. If your ball gets batted up in the air and it's coming back to you, just bat it down, just hit it to the ground, because he caught his own pass and got tackled immediately for an 11-yard loss. And
well, there's your 1 yard right there, Jason.
Yeah, that's right. Yards would be 1,010 yards had he not done that play. By the way, that play is almost exactly what is keeping him out of being the #1 power conference QB in terms of total passing yards. He is just a tiny bit behind Tennessee's Joey Aguilar among all power conference TDs, all power conference QBs. Mm-hmm. In terms of total passing yards, but just a super impressive season from Darian Mensah so far. And yeah, just don't catch your own passes. You can sacrifice the pass completion percentage for the yards that you're going to get back. I did want to talk about our running backs really quick. You mentioned that a second ago. We only had 18 carries by our running backs. We were really leaning on the passing game. But I thought both Nate Shepard and Anderson Castle each had a couple nice runs. They averaged over 4 yards per carry. It wasn't great. We got, bottled up sometimes, but Clemson's got a fairly good defensive line, and the fact that we were able to get anything from the rushing game opened up stuff for the passing game. And I really wanted to mention, I saw Anderson Castle. Donald, it's just good to have a super experienced, I think he's fifth year. He's fifth year, maybe sixth year. I don't know. Anderson Castle's been around for a while. It's great to have a super experienced guy back there when you're passing. Now, the announcers mentioned, there was a play late in the fourth quarter where they mentioned how well Castle did picking up a blitz and keeping the guy out of Darian Mensah's face. I had noticed it even before that earlier in the game. There were a couple plays where I saw Anderson Castle was in there, Mensah dropped back, and Castle was like shading to one side or the other as that blitz pickup. And he saw the blitz coming from the other side, and he pivoted around to pick up the blitzer. It was advanced vision, advanced knowledge of the job of running. Running backs, we think of, give me the ball and I'm going to advance it. There's another role for the running backs, and that is protecting your quarterback on pass plays. And I saw Anderson Castle doing this again and again. If you want, look, go back and watch the replay, folks, if you want to see it. He was just doing a great job of making sure Mensah had the time. And that's one of the reasons Anderson Castle's in. He only carries the ball 5 times. He was in there in like 20 plus plays because that dude is a great pass blocker.
I don't know if it was the second quarter or the third quarter. The broadcasters had mentioned like, oh, Duke only has like 12 yards rushing. They really need to get the running game going. And Nate Shepherd, as he said that, Nate Shepherd ran for 15 yards, and they go, "Oh, well, that'll do it." And I just kept
Yeah.
yelling at TV, "Yo, just keep talking about how bad the running game is today. Maybe they'll respond." But I think just as you mentioned, they did a lot of the other things. I think a couple, like I said, a couple of those fourth down conversions where we only needed a couple yards, the 2-point conversion, those were as good as runs, right? Like we trusted our running backs with the football, whether it was handing it off to them or throwing a quick little dump off to them. We trusted them with the football. We trusted them to make the right play and to get yards downfield, and they were able to do that. But also, again, the blocks that they were able to do, drawing guys away from some areas of the field that allowed Darian Minshew some open passing lanes. All of those little things are things that they work on in practice that were executed brilliantly on the road in Death Valley. Again, a place that we had not won until yesterday in 45 years. So I like the poise that all of those guys showed and the execution that they had to make the plays that they needed to make to bit by bit stay in that game and give ourselves a chance to win at the end and go for it. And we did.
All right, let's get to the pass interference because the internet is losing its mind. Dabo Swinney really lost his mind in the postseason and the post-game press conference. He says one of the worst calls he's ever seen in his years of college football, and he's talking about with Duke had a fourth down with under a minute left to play. Darian Minshew was pressured, and it was I want to say it was 4th and 10. It was long.
Yeah, 4th and 10 or 4th and 11.
Yeah, he makes a throw, close to the goal line, in the direction of Quayshawn Brown, and there was pass interference called on Clemson corner Avion Terrell. And the very end of the play, it appears that all that happens is that Terrell and Brown are a little bit mixed up, and Terrell is actually closer to the ball than Brown is, and Brown almost pushes Terrell to get to the ball, and the color commentator. All the commentators all over social media are like, how is that not pass interference on Duke? How on earth can you call pass interference on Clemson? It's very frustrating, Donald, because everyone's looking at the end of the play. They're looking at the closing moments of the replay. If you watch the entirety of the play, and I want to be clear, by the way, the refs messed up. The refs were supposed to call defensive holding, not pass interference, which
would have been 5 yards as opposed to half the distance.
But just as the pass is being thrown, and throughout the duration of the play, Avion Terrell is literally grabbing onto Q and just holding him the whole way. The reason they are side by side at the end of that play when the replays look like it's a Duke pass interference is because Terrell was basically draped over Q the entire play. It's a clear pass interference or holding. There's no question about it if you watch the entirety of the play. And yet everyone just goes to the very end when Q is trying to push this guy away to get him off of him. And they go, how is that not pass interference on Duke? It's an atrocious misunderstanding of how the refs see a football play. And I think the problem is maybe that the ref threw his flag a little late. He's like, wow, that's really bad. And then he waits for the play to end and he goes ahead and throws the flag. He should have thrown it earlier because the foul happened. It clearly happened earlier on the play.
It was like bump and run coverage from the line of scrimmage. So as you mentioned, Terrell has his hands on Queso the entire time. And Jason, they did show that replay, that angle where it starts from the snap just one time. And then they showed the end of the play where it was just the last 2 seconds. They showed that about 10 times, right? So you could see how the narrative was formed based off the fact that they only showed the actual play one time, and they showed what they thought was the contact that the flag was thrown for. They'll write, multiple times and saying, how could this be on Clemson? And again, this is, and if you look, right, there's another angle that you missed. The Terrell, when he's falling down backwards because he's facing Queso, who's running towards the football. And they're saying, oh, well, he was trying to go for the interception. I don't know anybody that has eyes on the back of their helmet.
Yeah.
And I know he doesn't because he was face guarding without knowing where the ball was. Because he had been doing it the entire play. He was basically just along for the ride, and as he made the turn, that's when he kind of fell. Now, did Queso kind of extend his arm a little bit? Yeah, sure. If somebody's on your butt for 30 yards downfield, you're going to want to shed him too and figure out a way to get him off you so you can go for the football, or at least make a dive attempt for it. But I think in the end, as you mentioned, I think the correct call probably should have been defensive holding. It would have been 5 yards. It still would have been a first down, but only would have been 5 yards as opposed to half the distance where, it creates a little bit more of uncertainty for Duke to get the ball into the end zone, but it was the right call. The call was a penalty on Clemson in benefiting Duke, and that was the right call. I don't care what Dabo has to say about it.
Okay, so I want to get to the game happened. Let's get to what's next in terms of Duke having a pretty good shot now at the college football playoff. According to The Athletic, Duke now has a 16% chance to win the ACC and make the college football playoff.
Can I interrupt? Can I interrupt, Jason?
Good. Sure.
That stat was posted last night before Georgia Tech lost, so the odds might even be a little bit higher because they posted those stats during the third quarter of the Georgia Tech game.
Oh no! This was post Georgia. I saw this on The Athletic post Georgia Tech. And look,
what I'm saying is they updated it because I saw those stats during the game last night against Georgia Tech. They posted that same stat, and it was 16% for Duke at the time of the Georgia Tech game, and Georgia Tech had not yet lost. So again, that may be a little bit even higher now.
Well, the ACC race is a glorious, glorious mess. Virginia's undefeated. There are 5 teams with 1 loss each, thanks to mediocre NC State taking care of Georgia Tech last night. Miami, Donald, I'm sorry to say, they were the number 2 team in the country just a couple of weeks ago. They're completely out of the running for the ACC and the college football playoff. It's just done. Look, I don't want to look past the road game at UConn this week. We should not look past it, of course. Duke will be preparing for it. But let's be clear, let's be honest. That game functionally does not matter in Duke's quest for a spot in the ACC title game and potentially in the college football playoff. It literally does not matter at all. I want Duke to win. I think Duke will be heavily favored against UConn's okay. They're not great. This Duke team appears to be significantly better, even though it's a road game. For Duke, it comes down to this. We absolutely must beat UVA on the road. I'm sorry, UVA at home, UNC in Chapel Hill, and Wake Forest at Duke. Win those 3 games, and Duke's in pretty damn good shape for this. In fact, I'll go ahead. I'll make my call. If Duke wins those 3 games, I think we're making the ACC championship game because Louisville and SMU, 2 of the teams that have 1 loss, they play each other, so one of those teams will be knocked aside. Louisville also has a very tough game at Clemson. It'd be really nice if they lost to Clemson and then beat SMU. Can we arrange for that to happen? That would be very strategic for Duke. Georgia Tech and Pitt, 2 of the other teams that only have 1 loss, they play each other. So one of those teams will fall to 2 losses. Pitt, by the way, also plays Miami. Maybe Pitt could beat Georgia Tech and then lose to Miami. Very convenient. These things can happen. I'm just saying that there are a lot of wild scenarios. There are a lot of crazy tiebreakers. My bet is probably there's going to be 1 team with 1 loss that gets left out. I just hope it's not Duke. And I think actually if we beat Virginia, there's a pretty good chance we won't be the team that's left out. Virginia, I think, Virginia's schedule after us is not that difficult. I think Virginia's probably only going to end with 1 ACC loss. But if we beat them, that will be a nice tiebreaker over them. So it's going to be a crazy final few weeks. I'm just thrilled that we're in it. And all these games really, really matter.
Yeah, I think that, again, like you mentioned, we're not overlooking UConn. I think that's and I think way, way, way down the tiebreaker scenarios, like out of conference records may apply, but I don't think it's not going to be something that's going to be useful for these tiebreaker scenarios right now. But I think the one thing is that UVA game in 2 weeks is it. That is the game that you need to first start off with. Yes, run the table and finish out the season with just 1 loss in the ACC. That would be a hell of a run. And even if you don't make the college football playoff, you're getting to a pretty good bowl game with that, maybe the Holiday Bowl or something like that. But I think if they get into the last weekend and you have a couple of these teams with 1 loss, I think the tiebreakers, if we beat Wake, would start setting up margins for as they look down the table, right? When they say, okay, what's your record against the number 16, the number 17, all that, to start eliminating teams, because the one team, if we run the table, the one team you want to leave in that tiebreaker is UVA, because we will have beaten them and we will hold the tiebreaker over them. So we want to eliminate all these scenarios to get down to that, so that we always hold the tiebreaker over it and they can't pass us. I would like for all the other teams to help out in any way possible. I don't know if you're going to be able to count on my Miami Hurricanes, Jason. The late season swoon, trademarked by Miami, is in full effect right now, and I don't know what there's going to be to stop it. But I'm hoping they can turn it around and finish out the rest of the season. But this is where we're going to need to relying on some math in the form of other teams scoring more than the teams ahead of us. But hey, this is a scenario where, Jason, I don't care how many teams end up with one loss or end up in this conversation. Duke's in that conversation, and I like that for November 2nd to be in the conversation for the ACC championship game.
Well, I checked, and non-conference record does not factor into the
does not factor at all.
Yeah, cool. but wait, there's some crazy stuff with the tiebreakers. So obviously, if the two teams tied, it's head to head. That's easy. Mm-hmm. After that comes win percentage against all common opponents. Donald, that does not say ACC common opponents. Virginia losing to NC State in a non-conference game could be
would count.
Huge factor there in win percentage against common opponent. Duke has a victory over NC State, so that's kind of an interesting one. Then the next thing is win percentage against common opponents based on their order of finish in the ACC.
In the conference.
Yeah. Yep. So that's kind of then win percentage against all conference opponents. Then the highest ranking in the team rating score provided by Sports Source Analytics, who I've never heard of before.
So, Jason, the funny thing is you want a Wake Forest almost to do well until we face them. You want UNC. I don't necessarily want UNC to do well, but like UNC moving up a little bit might help, right? Beating UVA is the key here, because if you beat UVA, you always have the tiebreaker over them. And assuming that they, finish out the rest of their season unblemished, they're going to be higher up in the ACC. So when you talk about, as we go down the order, UVA is going to be up there, and Duke's going to say, "Well, we got that win," and again, that's going to vault them above maybe another team who has to wait until number 4 before they can claim a win. So scenarios are wild. Funny. It's funny, but that's why they're scenarios, and let's see how they all play out.
Yeah, it is exciting though. All right, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, a quick preview. Duke basketball begins the regular season against the Texas Longhorns. We'll tell you what to look for when the Longhorns take the floor in Charlotte in just a moment.
You don't technically need this car. You say that out loud to yourself. You say, I have no space. You say, I'm just looking. Then you click. Then you zoom in on photo number 87 and whisper, oh no. Then you text a friend, the one who always enables you. You say to yourself, this is the last one, knowing it is not. You don't need this car. But maybe, just maybe, this car needs you. Bring a trailer. It's never just a car.
Hey there, it's Dr. Sanjay Gupta with some exciting news to share. CNN is now streaming. That means you can read, watch, and stream everything in one subscription. You can watch news live 24/7. You can also explore catch-up videos and explainer videos, and you can also watch the library of CNN's originals, including my latest documentary, It Doesn't Have to Hurt. Just go to cnn.com/all access.
All right, we're back from the break. Jason and Donald here on the DBR podcast, the Duke Basketball Roundup, and it's time to look ahead to Duke's first opponent of the basketball regular season. That is the Texas Longhorns. Donald, I searched, I could not find any evidence of Texas playing an exhibition. What's going on there with Sean Miller? Texas. He's just taken over after many years at Xavier and Arizona and Xavier. He went to Xavier twice. He's the brand new coach there at Texas. And unlike most of the power conference schools, they did not play a high profile exhibition. In fact, I don't even think they played like a low profile exhibition. I found no evidence of it whatsoever.
Yeah, I don't think I think they may have played one of those behind closed door scrimmage, but did really those don't really get broadcast unless somebody actually is there to kind of report on it. In the case of Texas, that doesn't always happen. But Jason, let's talk about what they did last year to get to this point. They were 19 and 16 last year. They were 6 and 12 in the SEC. They made the NCAA tournament, but was in that play-in game against Xavier, against Sean Miller,
Yeah.
lost that game, then took their coach. I guess that's what happens in the NCAA. But this year, Jason, it's weird, right? We think of Texas as a team that's very much unknown. Like Sean Miller could take them to new heights and really get them back. They're a team that, with the Texas brand and the program and the money that's around Texas sports, they could easily be a top 10 team very quickly. They could also, be where they were last year and kind of struggle to make the NCAA tournament. They are picked to finish 10th in the SEC this year, which you're thinking, wow, 10th is bad. But it's the SEC, right? They got 14 teams into the tournament, so 10th isn't that bad. To put that in perspective, in the AP and the coaches poll, they are just outside of the top 25 in both of those polls, despite being picked to finish 10th in the SEC. 39th in Ken Palm, 30th in Evan Mia, 34th in Bart Torvik. And Jason, we do some of the spread sometimes. I think it's interesting. Duke is a 7.5-point favorite. This game obviously being played in Charlotte at the Spectrum Center, the home of the Charlotte Hornets. And ESPN's matchup predictor has Duke as a 79.9% favorite to win this game. So I think obviously the computers like Duke, the odds like Duke, Vegas likes Duke. We like Duke, but I think Texas, this is a physical team normally, and the unknown, the mystery of this team and how they're going to come out in the first game under Sean Miller, I think makes this game intriguing.
Yeah, and one of the interesting things about it is Sean Miller. Anytime there's a new coach, you think there's going to be a ton of turnover. We saw like at NC State, the entire roster went away. Last year, Louisville, the entire roster goes away, and you bring in a whole new roster. In the transfer portal era, in the era of college basketball free agency, typically when a coach leaves, everyone leaves with them. Well, interestingly, that did not happen at Texas. They bring back 3 perimeter guys, 3 guards, who all played pretty solid roles for them a year ago. Tremont Mark, on the wing, averaged 10.5 points per game, hit 35% of his threes, and was a starter. Jordan Pope was the other starter on the wing. He averaged 11 points per game, hit 36% from 3. These were their 2 starting wings from last year are both back, and their 6th man, their top guard reserve, Chendall Weaver, is back. He's kind of a defensive specialist. He's a guy who gets a lot of steals, and he hit almost 40% of his threes a year ago. All 3 of those guys are back, and it's possible all 3 of them start. Not entirely clear. Texas did bring in a wing, a perimeter transfer, a pretty good one, in Simeon Wilcher from St. John's. Simeon Wilcher was a big-time recruit when he went to St. John's. Hasn't been maybe quite as good as you would expect. Averaged about 8 points per game last year. But St. John's was a really, really good team a year ago. He was a starter for them. So, there's just a lot of perimeter options for this Texas team. There are not a lot of interior options. Probably the best transfer they got is Dalen Swain, who came over from Xavier. Obviously, he's a guy that Sean Miller knew really, really well. He averaged about 11 points per game, 5.5 rebounds per game. He's 6'7" forward for them. And he was arguably Xavier's best player down the stretch, like in the postseason tournament and the NCAA tournament. I think he averaged like 16 points per game in the postseason for Xavier. So that's a pretty good run for him. He's going to probably be at power forward for them. But like I said, this is just not a team with a lot of experience or a lot of players who look really, really impressive in terms of big men. And Duke is going to look huge next to these guys. That said, they will probably start. There's a 7-foot transfer, a guy named Matas Vokatatis. I want to say something like that. He's Lithuanian. I can't pronounce those names, but he is a 7-footer. He played at Florida Atlantic a year ago. He, as a freshman, he averaged 10 and 5 at Florida Atlantic. One of the better freshmen in the American Athletic Conference. Look, they're going to need that guy to take a big step forward. I could see this game being one where Duke really has a major advantage, both at power forward with Cam Boozer and at center with Big Pat. and it could be a really, if Duke wins it, if Duke wins this game, I suspect we're going to see Duke's advantage on the boards and Duke's advantage in the paint as a very, very significant factor, because this Texas team I looked up and down their roster. They don't seem like they've got the kind of guys who can compete with a very impressive front line for Duke. And it's worth mentioning that Matas Vokatatis, or whatever, the Lithuanian 7-footer, he's been injured much of the preseason. He turned his ankle. Sean Miller's saying that he'll be available for the game, but he hasn't been getting full practices in lately, and that could impact his play as well.
I think the one case you mentioned, some of the returnees and Jordan Pope and Traymon Mark, I think the book out on them is that they were very streaky at times. Like, there were times where they could fill it up very, very quickly, and then there was times where you could really stifle and suffocate them on defense and make it where they couldn't do anything really well with the basketball. They couldn't pass, they couldn't shoot, they couldn't make good decisions, and they were able, they became streaky as far as their production. And so when I'm looking for this game, Jason, I think back to this game against Tennessee that we played, this exhibition game, where high profile on the road, we played a physical Tennessee team that really, again, we talked about haymakers against in the football segment. And this one, we took a couple haymakers from them, right? And we learned how to get up off the mat and continue to press and get back into the game and then eventually take it over. This team, and Sean Miller teams are no exception. They're going to be physical. They want to test the fences, as they say in Jurassic Park. They want to see how far they can go before they start calling fouls. And I think that we learned a lot from that Tennessee game. And I think that a lot of that is going to carry over into this game against Texas. But I will say this, the one thing that I'm looking for is to see how the defense has progressed in the last week. Because I think this defense, as I mentioned, if you can suffocate the point guards and the shooting guards, they're going to have a tough time getting the ball in, because they're going to rely on them a lot for their scoring. As you mentioned, their inside game isn't as great. They have a couple of freshmen that they may look to contribute, but they're not, again, they're untested. And this is going to be a big test for this Texas Longhorns team in, playing basically a semi-neutral game for them in Charlotte. I think the physicality of things is going to be something that now we're prepared for. And so we'll be able to kind of counteract that. But the defense, I'm really looking to see how the defense kind of makes this a game where, even if we don't shoot well, which can be the case, right? We may shoot a ton of volume but not get a lot in. I want to see the defense be the star of the show, because with rebounding, again, with the interior presence that we have, shutting guys down at the rim, perimeter defense is going to be key, but also maybe getting a bunch of rebounds, but getting some steals, getting some, making it where Texas turns the ball over, whether unforced or forced, allowing us to go the other way and quickly get baskets. That's what I'm looking to see as we start this season.
Yeah, the last thing I'll mention is, and I mention this because Texas brings back so many players on the perimeter from last year. Texas was pretty good at defending the three-pointer a year ago. They allowed their opponents to only hit just slightly above 33.5%, 33.8% from three-point land, which, it's not like it's dominant perimeter defense, but that's pretty good perimeter defense. And again, because Texas has so many of the guys who did that back, that's going to be a big factor in this game, because this Duke team takes a lot of threes and wants to shoot a lot of three-pointers. I mean, literally, we're going to have 5 guys on the floor at pretty much all times. Maybe not Malik Brown, but pretty much everybody else who comes out there is going to have a green light. If you're open, you're allowed to take that shot. And in fact, we're looking for you to take that shot. So I think one of the keys in this game is going to be, is Texas able to hold down the Duke three-point attack? And are they able to hold it down while not then allowing Big Pat and Cam to just go off on the inside? It's a pick your poison kind of thing against Duke. And I think it's significant, Donald. The Duke averaged right around 90 points per game in our 2 exhibitions against two teams that would have been very competitive, with Texas. So are you able to keep Duke under 90 points? Because it's going to be awful hard to score 90 points on this Duke team. That's for Texas, I think, is the big question.
Last point for me, Jason, in the preseason, we had a game at home against a Power 4 opponent. We had a game on the road at the biggest arena in college basketball against the Power 4 opponent. And now we get a Power 4 opponent in a neutral site, in again, a venue that could mimic the round of 32 in the NCAA tournament. You're facing a 8, if you want to be a 1 seed, right? And you're in that round of 32 against the 8-9. That's where Texas could be. And I think that I want to see the ball movement on offense be there. That's something that we tracked all year last year, and how we assist to made baskets ratio. That assist ratio was always high when we did well. And so I want to see how that comes out in this first game. We saw a lot of guys making great passes, finding the open men for baskets. But I think, again, in this atmosphere, again, John Shire wants these tests. We got a road test against a good team. We got a home game against a good team. And now we start in a neutral site where we hope to be playing all of March and all of April against these tough teams. So I'm looking forward to doing it. I don't know. I know we had talked earlier in the summer about you going. Are you planning to go up to Charlotte for this game?
Unfortunately, I can't. I thought about it long and hard, and they're a million things going on. It's just too busy.
I couldn't make it, but I will say shout out to the Duke women. They are already in Paris. They play on Monday night. Or I guess it'd be Monday night in Paris, but Monday afternoon for us. But a great week to start college basketball. Duke women on Monday, and then you got Duke men on Tuesday. Can't wait for all of it, Jason. Throw away the remote control. YouTube TV, work out this deal with ESPN, please, so we can get back to regularly watching this stuff. But I'm looking forward to the start of the season.
Yep. Texas and Duke in Charlotte at 8:45 p.m. Eastern time on Tuesday, November 4th, Election Day. By the way, I've got one of my best friends in the world is running for the mayor of Sandy Springs, Georgia, which is a fairly big city in Sandy Springs. So, go Andy Bauman. Anyway, until then, he's Donald. I'm Jason. Congrats to the Duke football team. And here's the Duke band playing us out and taking us home.